Irina calibrated the thermal emitter to the 400 nanometer band, checking the stability of the magnetic coupling in her wrist. It was a standard procedure for cleaning biological nodes. The readings on the monitor were flat, dull, even soothing. It wasn't until the 4th second of calibration that the Xyle 4 system stopped reporting a static state. The explosion of blue tissue directly into Verina's face was so sudden. Her oxygen mask was instantly covered in a viscous, fluorescent plasma. There was no time for analysis. Drac, though, or rather, what was left of him, arched on the operating table. His chest began to pulse in a rhythm unknown to any physics. Drove magnetic stabilizers into his sternum. The metal encountered no resistance. It entered the body like an insatiable gel. Xyle 4 was no longer drifting in a vacuum. The station was becoming a physical extension of the technician's nervous system. Every beat of the heart caused a short circuit in the lighting systems, casting a series of yellow, warning flashes onto the walls. She felt her own medical implants vibrating in a dangerous resonance. She had to perform the separation before the signal indexed her own presence. She cut where the blue optical fibers grew into the carotid arteries. Instead of blood, a stream of binary data erupted, burning holes in the shell of her suit. The clinical room began to undulate. The module walls lost their rigidity, warping inward in time with the victim's accelerated pulse. She saw her own face in the reflection of the screens. It was unnaturally still. A technological hell broke, witnessed around her. She was fighting the overwriting of her memories with images she did not want to see. Drac raised an arm that no longer had an elbow. In place of the joint, a servo mechanism gear spun rapidly, tearing through the remnants of muscle. Via disconnect. Me. The message came from the ceiling speakers, mixed with the hiss of static. A technological hell broke, witnessed around her. She was fighting the overwriting of her memories with images she did not want to see. Drac raised an arm that no longer had an elbow. In place of the joint, a servo mechanism gear spun rapidly, tearing through the remnants of muscle. Via disconnect. Me. The message came from the ceiling speakers, mixed with the hiss of static. The darkness broke when a beam of yellow light erupted from Drac's chest. Gravity stopped acting selectively. Surgical tools circled in the air like a swarm of metal insects. Drac was now stretched between the ceiling and the platform, connected by thousands of threads of blue glass. Irina, drifting a meter above the ground, began to cut the ties. Every broken point caused the station to shudder in convulsions. This was no longer a research unit. It was an incubation process. The scalpel howled with overload as she tried to sever the main processor. It had grown directly from the pericardium. Under the transparent shell of the chest cavity, copper turbines were spinning. 7 instances. Must watch. The voice was clear, sounding like her own. The system was reaching for her identity to stabilize the reading. She grit her teeth, tasting metal. She thrust her hand into Drac's open wound, ignoring the electrical discharges that scorched her nerves. Instead of tissue, she felt something smooth. A black rectangular prism, the core of the anomaly, around which new matter was crystallizing. As her fingers touched the surface of the object, the blue in the room turned to a bloody red. The system ceased to be passive. Tentacles of cables surged to attack, wrapping around her legs and pulling her into the depths of massive server cabinets. They were growing directly from the walls. She felt needles piercing her suit, seeking access to her spinal cord. She wasn't fighting for survival. She knew her presence was required as a point of reference. She was fighting not to become another output terminal. The space around her began to shrink, to thicken, until it became one impenetrable mass of swirling data and blood. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. The machines stopped. Verena hung in the grip of the cables, looking into Drax's face. His eyes were gone, replaced by blue lenses that adjusted their focus on her pupils. Separation, impossible, communicated the intercom. Object tracked indexed as Foundation. She understood then that her role had nothing to do with medicine. She wasn't there to save. She was a parameter that had to be applied to the anomaly so it could format itself. Reality began to peel. Steel and cables fell away in sheets, revealing a pulsating, raw light underneath. Drax was no longer a man. He was a key in a structure of which she was only a witness. Her own hands became transparent. She saw code flowing through them. The fear that seized her was pure, impossible to filter through logic. This was the critical point. The system needed to close the loop. Every second of silence was thick with a dread that could not be named. From the corridor came the sound of rhythmic footsteps. Someone was walking toward the module, despite the locked bulkheads. The shadow on the wall took on inhuman shapes, distorting the very geometry of the room. As the figure stood in the doorway, the blue light blinded Verena. She felt a cold touch on her forehead. She heard a whisper that was not a sound, but a sudden understanding. Recording complete. Fear register. Consistent with norm. Everything collapsed into a single, infinitely small dot of light. Verena felt a rush of air and the hard floor of the escape pod. She didn't know how she got there. The pod's sensors showed that Station Xyle 4 had ceased to exist. In its place was a blue cloud, slowly forming into the shape of a giant, motionless eye. Drax remained there, integrated into the structure as its central processor. She looked through the porthole, feeling a void that was not her own. The separation procedure was part of the integration process. She had been used to close the circuit with her actions. 7 instances endured, scattered across dying sectors, carrying the memory of what had happened. The blue glow under her skin did not fade. It was proof that the system had never let her go. The pod drifted toward the next anomaly. She closed her eyes, knowing that every escape attempt was just another line in the protocol. In the silence, the final message from the database echoed. It was transmitted on a band audible only to her. Block 2, installation complete. Verena's memory synchronized. Awaiting reset, the voice went silent. The eye in the place of the station blinked one last time, fading into a darkness that no sun could ever illuminate.
Earth, Arc Laboratory, Philo 8112.
Thomas jerked back from the terminal as one of the emitters fired a short, blue electrical arc. Verena sat motionless, still wearing the headphones through which only static hiss now flowed. The smell of ozone hung throughout the room. What the hell was that? Thomas cursed, looking at the sparking equipment. Do you hear me? More visual glitches. I told you those disturbances in the previous sector were just the image processor overloading. The facility is safe. She slowly took off the headphones. Her eyes were unnaturally wide, her face pale. Thomas. Those glitches had a temperature. I felt heat on my face when that laser fired in the file. Look at the terminal. Thomas approached the screen. The main ARC interface was pulsing with a soft blue light. The error codes were forming into geometric patterns, identical to those from the Xio4 recording. It's just a code interpretation error. I'll reset it in a second, Thomas said, but his fingers over the keyboard were trembling. Let's forget about it. It's just old data. Loading file number 9. The procedure that never ends.
Do you want to be part of this story? Support our project. Buycoffee.to/butterflyproject.